Wages growth hits a decade high. Lawyers, consultants, and educators to be among the hardest hit by AI, and Qantas to offer passengers the option to pay to make sure no one's in the seat next to you. It's Thursday, the 18th of May, 2023. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. Big day for us. It's our third birthday.
It is a very special day, isn't it, Sean? Three whole years. Can you believe that?
No, I can't. It's gone, in some ways it seems like 10, and in others it seems like about 6 months.
Well, how about this for a stat? 12.5 million, actually it's probably a bit over that now, approaching 13 million downloads across that time, across the last 3 years. I think that is just remarkable. And Sean, got to mention, to celebrate, did you see our new logo today? I think it looks pretty slick.
I'm with you on that. It looks pretty good. And we have to say thank you to everyone, of course, who supported Fear and Greed over the last 3 years, whether you've been here from day one or you've just discovered us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spreading the word. Love the MIA awards that we're giving out at the moment, the most enthusiastic advocate of Fear and Greed. And I know people who have literally been listening from that first month or so. So thank you so much to everyone out there listening to us.
Yeah, well said. And Sean, I've got one more stat for you. Across that last, because I know you love your statistics. Over the last 3 years, we have done, I think, 750 interviews over that time. And I reckon you've busted out a good one, an absolute cracker for us today. Coming up a little bit later on, you're talking to Mark Bouris, who is one of Australia's most successful businessmen and entrepreneurs.
Yes, so he's invested in something called BOA, B-O-A, which is an app designed to help small businesses. And as you and I know, we run our own small business. I'd say medium-sized business now, Michael, but, small or medium-sized business. You always want to know stuff, who's a good accountant? How do I get my printing machine fixed? All that sort of stuff. Now, this app, BOA, is all about that. So we talked to Mark about that, but also about the small business community in Australia, how it's going, what it means to the economy. He is a fierce advocate of small business, always has been. Of course, he grew Wizard, the lender, into a massive business. He now owns Yellow Brick Road. He does the Mentor podcast. He's an author. He's all sorts of things, Mark.
He's a straight shooter.
And a straight shooter. He's very much a straight shooter.
Yeah, it's a really good conversation. It's coming up later on. Definitely worth sticking around for. The main story, though, Sean, this morning, and a big one to get through first, wages growth has hit its highest level since 2012, but thus far it's not high enough to force the Reserve Bank to lift interest rates.
Well, yes, that's the consensus view. Now, salaries rose 3.7% in the 12 months to the end of March, with private sector wages leading the way. For the quarter, wages rose 0.8%. It's not really surprising given the tightness in the labour market and high inflation. People can ask for and receive more money. Private sector wages led the way, increasing 3.8% for the year. Public sector wages were up 3%. The education and training industry led the way in terms of growth, rising about 1.5% in the 3 months. What does all that mean? So far, there's not really a wages outbreak problem that might fuel higher inflation, and unemployment is likely to rise as the economy slows. But the Bureau of Statistics figures do hold a couple of concerns, one being the breadth of the wage rises. More than a third of people receiving increases got more than 4%, and that is uncomfortably high, at least in inflation terms, maybe not for the individuals. All in all, though, Michael, wages aren't really pushing the Reserve Bank to lift rates again just yet.
So what's the consensus view on rates then, Sean? We know obviously we got a surprise hike 2 weeks ago. What happens in 2 weeks' time when the Reserve Bank board meets?
Oh, Michael, I wish I knew. Now, economists are divided on this. Some big names, such as National Australia Bank's Alan Oster, thinks there'll be another rate hike next month, perhaps another one after that even. Others, like AMP's Shane Oliver, doesn't think the economy needs any more rate hikes, but that's different from whether or not we'll get one. Basically, in the central bank's words, it's a finely balanced decision, and information like yesterday's wages data really matters.
So does that mean then there's no consensus view really on rates? I mean, what does it take to actually qualify as a consensus view?
Well, it's consensus is basically getting a bunch of economists or investors together, and if something is drawn out and saying, so 30 economists and 20 of them reckon it's going to go one way, that's consensus. But at the moment, I don't know what the numbers are, but it's kind of 50-50, I reckon.
Oh, so it's essentially you just need a majority to call it a consensus.
A good majority, Michael, a good majority.
Local markets yesterday, obviously whenever there's any kind of data around, tends to have a bit of an impact. What happened yesterday?
Well, the S&P ASX 200 closed down 0.5% to 7,199 points. Now, the wages data played into that, but mostly was about the weak lead in from Wall Street. Macquarie and Wesfarmers were among the worst of the large caps. They both dropped more than 1%. At least among the large caps, WiseTech Global was best. It was up more than 1%. Rough day for the gold miners with the price of the precious metal falling below $2,000 an ounce. Newcrest Mining, which earlier in the week agreed to be bought by Newmont Resources, fell to its lowest level in 6 weeks. St Barbara, Silver Lake Resources, Northern Star Resources and Perseus Mining all ended lower. In corporate news, Michael, online furniture retailer Temple & Webster reiterated full-year earnings guidance of between 3% and 5%. That's pretty good for them. Retailer Best & Less, its share price fell nearly 4% after it cut net profit guidance for the second half of the year. And global malt supplier United Malt, which basically provides malt for brewers, it's swung to a net loss over the past 6 months. So its share price, investors expected it, its share price went up 2%. One interesting comment out of that one, though, Michael, and this is close to your heart. Pale ales, apparently, are losing their appeal, maybe losing their luster.
Oh, no.
Yes.
I disagree. I demand to see a consensus view on this.
Yes. Well, craft beers are just becoming a little passé, at least in North America. And the Pilsners and lagers, they're coming back. They're making a comeback.
Oh, dear. No. I refuse to believe that, Sean. I know it's come out of your mouth, therefore it must be gospel. But I'm scared.
The funny thing is, I've really gone off pale ales. I only drank pale ales 2 years ago, 12 months ago, and now I choose to not, and I don't know why.
Oh my God! So maybe it is true.
Too many pale ales.
No. What about international markets? What's happening, Sean?
Well, fears the US economy will default at the end of this month has shaken confidence in investors. Both sides of politics are negotiating an increase to the legislated debt ceiling to allow government to continue operating. Until that's done, markets are trading very, very warily. In terms of commodities, Brent crude is trading around $75 a barrel. As mentioned earlier, gold is lower and the Aussie dollar is fetching 66.5 US cents.
Now, Sean, very briefly, I hope you didn't think you were going to get away without doing this. All week, we've been talking about kind of slightly obscure commodity prices. We always hear about gold and oil and obviously iron ore and coal prices. But in the last few days, we've discussed coffee beans and we discussed lumber and soybeans. And I said I wanted something good, something different, something spectacular for today. What is it? What have you got a cracker for us?
Well, it's beef. Why beef, you ask?
Yes, why beef?
I love the name beef, but a regular listener, Helen, messaged me yesterday and said, since it's Fear and Greed's 3rd birthday, you should really be doing something on leather because leather represents 3rd anniversaries. Durable, warm, strong, all the nice things about your 3rd anniversary.
Did you Google leather wedding anniversary presents, Sean? Because I think that could come with some risk. I did
indeed, but I'm going to leave that. Helen was the one who got in touch with me to say 3rd anniversary is leather. Now, leather mostly comes from cow hides. That does come from other animals, but mostly cow hides. So I had to look around for something relevant. And came up with beef.
Well, that's a fairly logical link there, I suppose.
Yeah. And there's also good news in this too. So I was going to do live cattle, but live cattle prices have dropped sharply. So I was looking for good news on our 3rd birthday. Beef prices are actually coming down. Now, they were at ridiculously high levels last year. They haven't exactly tumbled. They're down just 5% this year and 15% from their peak in March last year. But Michael, anything is good. I mean, last year they're at levels, all-time high levels. Basically, our house bought mince and sausages, but not much more.
No, I mean, this is high-stake stuff.
Yeah, high-stake stuff. Nice. Hopefully, prices will start to fall. Another cool thing about beef is that it's one of the few commodities that isn't really measured in US dollars. So its primary measurement is a BRL, which stands for...
What is that?
Brazilian Real per kilogram. The real, of course, being the Brazilian currency, so Brazilian Real per kilogram, BRLs. There you go.
I find that quite incredible. That feels a little bit illogical. I realize, obviously, that South America is a very big kind of cattle producer.
Yeah. So the US is nowadays the largest producer of beef. It used to be Brazil, hence that. Brazil's now number 2. Argentina, I think, is number 6 or so. But that's where it comes from. Australia is actually the 7th largest producer of beef.
Sean, you've done it. For our 3rd birthday, you've really delivered. It might be our birthday, but you are the one giving the presents.
Oh, I like it. I have delivered an inane fact about something which, unless you happen to get lucky in a trivia quiz, is really irrelevant to most people's lives.
That seems a very good place to take a break. We'll come back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, next week's Quad meeting in Sydney has been cancelled after US President Joe Biden pulled out.
Instead, the leaders of the US, Japan, India and Australia will meet on the sidelines of the Group of 7 summit in Japan this weekend. President Biden cancelled his trip as a result of ongoing domestic negotiations over expanding the US debt ceiling. Now, of course, if that ceiling isn't lifted, the US defaults, so it's pretty serious business, and domestic politics nearly always trumps over international politics. Hence, he's pulled out. Also, he's pulled out of his trip to PNG. Very disappointing for the government of Port Moresby up there. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese yesterday said it made sense for the leaders to meet in Hiroshima this weekend. While not members of the G7, both India and Australia have been invited this weekend. The Prime Minister said it remained possible that Narendra Modi, the PM of India, who has scheduled a separate bilateral meeting to coincide with the Quad, could still visit Australia.
Sean, the financial regulator has launched an investigation into Newey boss Jonathan Rubinstein, examining whether he knew about a potential takeover bid when he bought Newey shares through his super fund last year.
Very serious issue. Mr. Rubinstein, who has been in the CEO role for over a year, bought 800,000 shares worth about $236,000 in the technology company in 3 parcels in early September 2022. Now, the same week, Newey chair Jeff Bleach received an inquiry from a US-based legal software company, Reveal, about whether Newey would be interested in potentially selling some of its assets. Mr. Bleach ultimately said no. In a statement yesterday, Newey said Mr. Rubinstein's share purchase had been approved by Mr. Bleach in September last year, and it took place during an approved trading window. Maybe, but very, very awkward timing, particularly relevant to Newey investors. They're very sensitive about this sort of things because they're still battling several legal battles following the disastrous IPO of Newey back in early 2020. Its share price is up nearly 60% this year, but it's still about 10% of what it got to at its peak.
Now, lawyers, management consultants, tertiary educators and logistics teams, Sean, are among the Australian workers set to be most heavily affected by generative artificial intelligence.
About a third of the tasks completed by workers in the most AI-exposed jobs are set to be affected by wider use, according to research from economics advisory firm Mandala Partners. And that will be a boost to productivity. That's according to a report in the Financial Review. Among those jobs set to change, due to programs like ChatGPT, Bing or Bard, are policy experts, psychologists and counsellors, judges and telemarketers. Now, among the most exposed jobs, 7 out of 10 are also more likely to have workers with an undergraduate or postgraduate university degree, i.e. the more educated, at least in terms of tertiary qualifications, are more likely to be affected than those who don't have them.
Hey, Sean, just on the topic of AI, did Did you see the comments yesterday by the chief executive of OpenAI?
No.
About the potential impact of the technology that essentially his company has created, that it does have the potential to cause significant harm to the world without urgent intervention by governments. Aren't we just seeing a bit of a theme kind of developing here, whereas everyone that's been involved in kind of developing AI is suddenly going, uh-oh, this has the potential to get out of control.
This is a guy whose company is pushing it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's quite remarkable. This is obviously in the US and appearing before kind of US politicians, and so acknowledging all the good and all the potential that it has to kind of change the way we work and to improve the way we work in many cases, but also acknowledging that, hey, there is a significant kind of risk here that if there is kind of a rogue operator or essentially rogue AI, that there could be, quote, significant harm to the world. Which I don't know about you, Sean, but that just feels a little bit ominous.
Yeah, just a bit. Everything's good. P.S. It could destroy the world.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to take the good with the bad, don't you?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now, let's move on. Tumbling fertilizer prices have pushed Incitec Pivot's share price down to its lowest level in almost 2 years after the group announced a fall in first half earnings.
Now, Incitec Pivot has two parts. There's the fertilizer business. Earnings from that part of the business fell 58%. It also has an explosives business. That division's profit rose 42%. Demand for fertilizers tumbled following flooding in many growing regions. Now, Managing Director Jean Johns said the disappointing result shouldn't deter investors from the goal of splitting the company into two. And she said the second half will be stronger than the first half. Problem is, the viability of the fertilizer business on its own has been one of the arguments against the split. And clearly, yesterday's results adds fuel to that fire.
Now, there's a bit of state news around the place, Sean.
There is. Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews has pressed pause on the $10 billion Melbourne Airport rail project. Now, that comes amid a federal government review of infrastructure projects and discussions with the Prime Minister. Northern Territory Chief Minister Natasha Files has proposed an emissions storage hub in the Territory that will take carbon waste from gas plants and provide a feedstock for making fertiliser and other products. And in Queensland, Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk has reshuffled her cabinet and dumped her health minister.
And finally, Sean, I love this story. Qantas has launched a neighbour-free initiative whereby you can pay to have the seat next to you on a flight vacant.
Yes. Now, it's already been trialled on 6 routes. It's now being expanded. The idea is on flights that aren't full, you can pay possibly as little as $30 to make sure the seat next to you stays vacant. So you get 2 seats effectively, and Qantas makes money on a seat that otherwise get nothing for. How it works is that 48 hours before taking the flight, Qantas will email passengers on planes with spare capacity and offer them the option of buying the seat next to them.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, 48 hours out is still a fair way. They'd have to be pretty sure that they're not going to be able to fill it with an actual body.
Well, I think what happens is that if someone in the suddenly capacity, so if a plane is cancelled and they've got to load people up, you'll get a refund of that $30 and you might end up with someone next to you. Mm-hmm. But what it does show is that most people must book tickets 48 hours out, because if Qantas is confident enough to say, oh, well, we'll offer this deal 48 hours out, there mustn't be a lot more ticket selling in that final couple of days. Pretty interesting, though.
That's a great story.
Yeah. Just before we leave the airlines, another story that came out yesterday, a couple of the big international carriers that fly in and out of Australia are announcing record profits. Now, given seat prices are so expensive, I suppose it's not surprising, but it's slightly irritating, maybe is how I'd put it. So Singapore Airlines came out and announced a record profit for the year to the end of March. It's actually the 3rd largest carrier of international passengers into and out of Australia, behind Qantas and Jetstar. It's got about 10% share and making record profits. And Emirates, which is scheduled to operate about 63 flights in and out of Australia a week by next month, also announced a record profit. I mean, I suppose that's fair enough, but I'm sick of paying for expensive airfares.
You wouldn't be having some international travel later this year, and this is your self-interest once again kind of sneaking in?
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that.
Sure. International news now, Sean. Elon Musk has dismissed speculation that he might step down as Tesla's CEO, and he's told the company's annual shareholder meeting that the electric car and solar panel company will start advertising.
That's right, Michael. Now, there's been lots of talk about whether Musk is going to stay on as CEO of Tesla. He's also got space exploration. He's just appointed a new CEO for Twitter. Asked by a shareholder about the rumours, in fact, the shareholder said, "Say it ain't so." Musk replied by saying, "It ain't so." And there was no further discussion.
And finally, Sean, new research shows that to be really rich in a country, you need the most money in Monaco, then Switzerland, and then Australia in front of the US.
Yes, research. I'm not sure whether we should be joyous about this or not.
No, I actually
really.
don't think so. It feels like the goalposts have just moved even further.
Yeah. So research by Knight Frank shows that to be among the richest 1% of Monaco residents, you need wealth of $12.4 million US. In Switzerland, it's $6.6 million US. And in Australia, little old Australia, it's $5.5 million US. In the US, you need $5.1 million, and squeezed between Australia and the US is New Zealand. The findings demonstrate how the pandemic and surging living costs are widening the gap between rich and poor nations, according to Bloomberg. The entry point for Monaco's richest is more than 200 times greater than the $57,000 US needed to join the 1% in the Philippines, which is one of the lowest ranked of the 25 locations in the study.
That's a really interesting study.
Yeah, just surprising, just Australia, particularly given the exchange rate at the moment, that we're so highly ranked.
Now, Sean, because it's our third birthday today, I was wondering if we should just do something a little bit unorthodox.
I think so.
And we're going to be joined briefly by the third co-founder of Fear and Greed.
Unbeknownst to him at this point, but see, he listens to every show we record. Right now, I reckon, Michael, he'll be ferociously trying to tidy up his voice for the show.
All right, Adam Lang, good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Oh.
I didn't expect to be here.
Well, we can't have a birthday party without all three founders involved, Adam.
Oh, okay. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, a quick question without notice for you both. Next week, I don't know if you heard that story, Adam, where we're talking about Qantas and its neighbour-free initiative where you can pay to have the seat. Now, next week, the three of us are taking a Qantas flight together on a bit of a Fear and Greed trip. And I'm a little bit curious to know, are we sitting together?
I think we are.
Oh.
That feels like it could be kind of uncomfortable because I've got a hunch that Sean's an armrest hog.
Well, I was going to say $30 well spent if that's the case.
Suddenly it just ends up with two of us with one seat in the middle that's vacant. And who is the unlucky one?
So what happens, hold on, if you have this, you pay $30 for the middle seat to be vacant, and then the person on the other side of you, let's say it's Adam, he puts his stuff on the seat that I paid the $30 for.
No. You can pick it up and you can chuck it into the aisle. I haven't read the fine print, obviously, but I'm
sure that'd be part of it. Yeah,
I'm quite sure you can chuck it out. If you can get the door open on the plane, feel free just to turf it out. But anyway, look, very serious reason for getting you on here, Adam. It's just to say happy birthday to us. Thank you to everyone who has listened to Fear and Greed over the last 3 years, and the fact that we are now nudging 13 million downloads over the last 3 years just is really kind of very gratifying, wouldn't you say?
It is. It's a delight. And thank you both very much. Also, just out of that quest for 13 million, I'm going to be listening a number of times today on different devices to see if I can get it over the line.
Is this because your voice is on it today?
I always listen. Quality control.
I'll be listening to the last couple of minutes of it.
Over and over again. And of course, Adam, we can hear your dulcet tones every weekend as part of the weekend edition when you adjudicate between Sean and I in deciding the biggest stories of the week. And it's always it's a fairly kind of full contact kind of podcast.
Yeah, more refereeing or umpiring than adjudicating, I'd say.
Yes, sometimes it's directed towards me, that contact.
Oh, it's always.
Slight inconsistency there, Sean. All right, thank you both very much. Up next, of course, is the Fear and Greed Daily interview with Mark Bouris. Definitely worth sticking around for, entrepreneur and business leader. It is a great chat. It's up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you very much, Michael.
And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 18th of May, 2023. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can check out our new artwork as well. Make sure you're staying up to date on all the business news with Alexa and your Amazon Echo smart speaker. Simply say, Alexa, play the Fear and Greed podcast to catch the latest episode. Grab yours now at amazon.com.au. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.